The key hid under cold tea, its loop peeking up like a fish blink through the tannin. It had not been there when Mara poured. 4 minutes later, when she lifted the cup again, a rusted oval clinked against the porcelain and cracked the glaze like a spider's web. The parcel on her table carried no return address. Inside a single sheet of onion skin paper, "You inherit what you imagine. Come home." Imara turned the key in her fingers. It left brown flakes on her skin that smelled faintly of rain rotting in a pipe. Her mother's maiden name, Elowen Vale, had belonged to a county none of them spoke of, a notch of land where the hills wore a permanent bruise and winter arrived early. The note said, "Home." She had not been there for 20 years. The key was old. It was heavy. In the engraved bow, the metal bloomed into a lattice of thorned vines. Something about it tugged behind her eyes. When she blinked, her coffee table rippled like a pond. A shape swam below the surface for a fraction of a heartbeat, a house too tall, with a face like an idea you wished you'd never had. Mara packed a bag before she could think better of it. She put the key inside the front pocket. The teeth pressed through the fabric, as if they wanted to taste whatever the future was. Elowen Vale sat beyond 10 miles of road with no shoulders. Hawthorn hedges chewed the asphalt. Crows moved in slow black tides from tree to tree. A cold shelf of cloud lay over the valley. As Mara drove down the last hill, her phone lost signal and did not find it again. The town's main street was a row of closed eyes. Bakery, post, a pub called the Badger's Drink. A window displayed a chalk sign that read, "Winter fair postponed due to circumstance." Circumstance had stolen the paint from most doors and left the church with a tilt. The only person on the street was an old woman in a knitted purple hat. She did not look at Mara so much as at a point 3 inches to Mara's left. "Afternoon," Mara said. "Time," the woman replied, as if naming an animal. "There's a storm at the house." "Which house?" The woman's face squeezed into a portrait of pity. "I suppose it had to be you. The Vale House never eats strangers." "Only kin." Mara opened her mouth and closed it again. The woman raised her hand. "If you've a mirror with you, leave it at the inn. It's a small kindness. What will a mirror do? What they all do. Tell the truth until the truth is no use." Mara booked a room at the inn and left her hand mirror behind, feeling foolish and a little relieved. She carried her bag to her car, then paused. The key in the front pocket throbbed twice, slow as a pulse. Outside, the trees shifted and presented their unlit faces to her. Somewhere past town, the house waited. The thought made the space behind her ears ache. She drove toward it. The lane to Vale House was nothing but a strip of gravel punctuated by gateposts of white stone. One post wore a crack down the middle like a healed scar. The iron gate stood open. It did not creak. It did not move. It watched her pass. Vale House rose at the end of a brown field. Every window wore a lid of folded shutters. The roof angles were too sharp. The eaves were too deep. The front steps yawned, and the door made no pretense of being friendly. The house had 3 floors, a widow's walk, an attic dormer with a blind eye, and a half-built tower on the east side that ended in a broken tooth. Mara stopped the car and turned off the engine. Silence lay thick on the world, the kind that takes pride in its completeness. She put the key in her palm. The house pulled her forward by that small weight, as if it were a magnet and she were iron. On the door, at forehead height, someone had carved a small door of their own, a rectangle with a peephole. When she leaned close, the peephole warped the wood's grain into spirals. She smelled damp plaster and something sweet like bruised pears. The key turned. The lock accepted it like a warm mouth. The house inhaled her. The air inside Vale House tasted of old books and ocean, although the nearest shore lay 50 miles away. The foyer reached 30 feet up to a lantern roof veiled in dust, where moths slept like grey petals. A staircase split in 2, following the curve of the walls. The floor was a checkerboard of marble, white squares crazed with thin brown lines, black squares that reflected a darkness deeper than the foyer deserved. Frames hung empty on the walls. No faces, no family. Hello? Mara called. The echo answered, hello, hello, then a third voice, soft and unhurried. Finally, she turned too quickly. The room swayed. Her heart thumped against her ribs like a trapped animal. Who's there? Silence returned, honest and wide. But the sense of being observed didn't fade. It was not the ordinary chill of a stranger's house. It was as if the building knew her stance, recognized how she held her shoulders, the way her left foot turned inward. It knew the sting on her tongue where she'd bitten it once at 7 in a playground fight. The foyer watched with a seriousness that was almost affectionate. On the hall table, a copy of The Topography of Sleep lay open to a chapter titled Architectures of Dream. A fountain pen rested on the spine. The ink hadn't dried. A second item waited beside the book. A bell of polished brass with a crack in it, no clapper. Mara set down her bag and walked to the base of the stairs. Her footsteps threw dust. One stair sighed. Another gave the smallest shiver. On the second-floor landing, a door on the right stood ajar. Within, she glimpsed a bed where the sheets had curled like sea, foam and a mirror draped in lace. She took the left side of the stairs instead. The kitchen still held a smell of rosemary and pan fat that had never seen the inside of a refrigerator. A farmhouse table slumped in the middle, one leg wrapped in a handkerchief as if it were recovering from surgery. On the counter, a knife had turned black. The sink's matte belly held a tide pool of stiff water. She leaned over the drain and listened. Somewhere in the pipes something inhaled, something whispered. Her mother had told bedtime stories about a house that licked away nightmares, the way a cat cleans milk from whiskers. In the stories, the house hummed to itself and boiled tea, and left the doors open in summer. Then her mother became quiet about her girlhood. Then she died. Then the stories dried up. Mara poured water from the pitcher. She did not drink it. She left the glass on the table as bait for the house's attention and stepped back into the hall. A young man stood by the parlor door. He had one of those faces you trust by accident, a tumble of dark hair, a smile that took itself apart before it started. He wore a cardigan with a missing button and held his hand out as if they'd known each other once. "You took longer than I thought," he said. "I didn't know I was expected. Everyone is." He shook his head. "I'm Abram Elowin's nephew." Elowin... The name knocked echo loose from the walls. "My mother's sister? The one who sent you the key?" The smile broke entirely now. "She's upstairs. Or a part of her is. It's hard to be whole in this place. We live in fragments, so the house can't swallow us all at once." Mara stared at him. "Who is we?" He looked down at his hands as if the answer waited there. "Those who didn't leave fast enough. Or at all. Is this a prank? We don't have the appetite for pranks." He turned and passed into the parlor. She followed because her body had already decided. The parlor brought the ocean smell into focus. A painting of a cliff hung on the wall, crackled by salt air that had never touched the paint. Chairs sat in pairs as if they preferred company, except for one wingback set apart, its back to the windows. In it, a woman with hair the color of snowdrift stared at the carpet. "Elowen," Abram said. The woman lifted her face and smiled. Mara saw her mother at once, reflected there but not mimicked. The same set to the mouth when faced with a hard problem, the same eyebrows that had learned surprise late. "My clever Mara," Elowin said, and opened her arms. Mara stood a long moment. Then she stepped into the embrace, and the room adjusted around them as if it too had been waiting and could at last exhale. "Why did you send me the key?" Mara asked, when she had managed to sit and the sun had managed to crawl a little higher across the floor, without making much difference to the light. "Because I'm leaving," Elowin said. "Where?" "The house will decide. It decides what it does with what it loves." Mara looked at Abram. "Is she dying?" Abram shrugged one shoulder. She's being translated. Elowen laughed, a wet paper sound. Maybe Abram's right. Maybe he's silly. The house is old and I have fed it for so long. It's hungry in a particular way. You can't starve it. You can only choose what to give. What is it? Mara said. What does it eat? Elowen's eyes brightened like a kettle catching into boil. Dreams, love. The ones you believe in. The ones that left claw marks. And we live here to feed it? Oh no. Elowen's smile turned thin. We live here because it lives here. We feed it because it takes its tithe. And sometimes, she tilted her chin toward the ceiling, sometimes it gives back what you lost as a kindness. Like a bad father who remembers your birthday one year and thinks that covers the bruises. Abram knelt by the hearth and poked at ash that remembered being flame. You'll see it soon enough. It's very proud of itself, Mara wanted to argue. She wanted to leave. Both urges slid off the moment like rain off oilcloth. The house hummed a note she could feel in the bones of her ear. Don't hurry, it said. I waited for you. Elowen reached for her hand. He sent for you because the house is changing. It has grown crowded. It wants to be the only place to sleep. Mara tried to keep the edge from her voice. He? Ephraim Vale, Abram said. Your great-great-grandfather. The dreamer who built it. Built what? Elowen's mouth worked once, twice, as if she were chewing on a word too brittle to swallow. He built a door in his head and the house came through. He thought it was a gift. It's good at that. It stares at the wound and says, Would you like a story to cover it? Mara chose a bedroom on the second floor with a view of the half-built tower. Someone had set a tea tray at the foot of the bed. Steam made little ribbons above the cups. She touched the pot, warm. The clock on the mantel said 3:11, but the hands trembled as if cold. She did not drink the tea. She sat on the bed and slit her bag open with the house's black knife. She took out her notebook, the one with a dog on the cover whose eyes always looked as if they were about to admonish her. She wrote, Elowen alive. House eats dreams, Abram Key, breathing walls. Between Abram and Key, she drew a small square and shaded it until the pencil bit into the paper. The square meant fear in her personal code. She set the notebook aside and went to the window. The tower had no roof. It stopped abruptly, as if the builder had remembered an appointment and walked away mid-sentence. From its stones grew a curl of ivy, with leaves the color of bruised fruit. The sky beyond wore a flat grey face. A rook sat on the chimney and showed her its eye, which had all the charity of a sewing needle. She lay down. She stared at the ceiling rose where a chandelier had been. She stared until the rose became a great white mouth and swallowed her clean. Sleep took her without asking. In the dream, she stood in a field of keys. They grew on stems, nodding in the wind. Some were bone. Some were bread. Far away, a house taller than the horizon tilted. In its windows, something moved like a tide, then like a woman's hands, then like smoke. She smelled her mother's hair, that lemon and sun smell from summers before the silence. The field spoke in a single voice made of many throats. Promise. What? Promise you'll keep the door open. Which door? The only door. Don't you see it? She turned. The purely black square of an open door hung in the air, 3 feet off the ground, casting no shadow. She reached. Her fingers sank through the edge and came out cold on the other side. She stepped forward. When she woke, the tea had gone cold. Her skin smelled of wet stone. In her mouth was the taste of old coins. Down the hall, something padded past her door. Light came with it, a grey-green light like the kind that leaks from dream edges. Mara slid off the bed, opened her door a crack and looked. A girl walked the corridor. She couldn't be more than 8. She wore a nightdress too short for her shins and carried a lantern made of bone. The lantern's light breathed like a sleeping animal. The girl's hair was braided with thread the color of rust. She did not leave footprints in the dust. Excuse me? Mara said. The girl stopped. She did not turn. If I look at you, she said, I'll remember you in the wrong shape. Best you stay a shadow until morning. Who are you? Dinah. The lantern's breath caught on the name and released it again. I used to be Elowen's daughter. Now I'm a hallway. But only at night. I don't understand. No one does. That's part of the agreement. What agreement? Dinah lifted the lantern, and the walls leaned toward it as if thirsty. We keep dreaming, she said. In return, the house keeps the things we can't bear. When we're awake, it's quiet. When we sleep, we're rooms. Rooms. You'll see. She began to walk again, and with each step, doors appeared in the walls where there had been no doors. Small ones at ankle height, tall ones that brushed the ceiling. Doors carved with moths and with teeth and with clumsy hearts. Dinah opened none of them. The lantern's light cuffed the knob of one, and the metal flinched. Dinah, Mara said, will I find my mother? Yes, Dinah paused. Her shoulders were thin as book spines. But you won't like the version. I'll take any version. People always say that until they don't. Dinah's footsteps made no sound. Mind the stair after the big window. It insists on being one more than it is. Where are you going? To patrol the dreams. To keep the forgetting thin. Yesterday it grew teeth. Dinah? But the girl was a patch of wall now and then just absence. The lantern stink faded. Something scratched in the pipes, then sang 3 notes, then went still. Mara shut her door. She pressed her forehead against it. The wood felt feverish. In the dark, she whispered, "Okay." She wasn't sure who she was talking to. The house hummed through the grain of the door as if pleased. "Okay," she said again. And when sleep came this time, she stayed awake inside it, like a swimmer under glass. Morning happened as a rumor. The sky admitted it had lighter shades of grey. Mara found Abram in the dining room trying to convince a loaf of bread to be bread again. "You met Dinah," he said without looking up. "She said she used to be your cousin." "She still is. Family is a room you carry. Some rooms you can't leave." He held up the knife. "Toast? What is this place?" Abram picked a crumb off the knife's edge. It started as one house and ended as several. Ephraim was a surveyor with too much imagination. He drew maps of rivers that weren't there yet, and roads that would be. He drew a house as a way to hold his wife's dying. The house arrived. At first it took her nightmares and spit out sleep stitched with daisies and good harvests. Then it developed a taste for the rest. "Do you live here?" Some days I'm a closet. Once a week I'm a set of stairs that go down only." Elowen entered with her hair braided to the side and a shawl pulled tight enough to disguise its shaking. She kissed Mara's head as if they had spent every morning of Mara's life like this. "You'll want to keep busy," Elowen said. "It only takes you if you let your mind idle too close to the edges. I'm not staying." Elowen glanced at the window where the world sulked under a sky like a dirty bowl. "Everyone says that. I have a life. A job. Friends. Names of diners who will forget their eggs if no one writes it down," Elowen said gently. "A rented room above a second-hand store with a boiler that mutters, and a plant that died the first week because you forgot which direction held the sun. 3 friends who love you unevenly. A 4th you won't call because their eyes were too kind when you told them the story of your mother. You don't have to prove what you have to me. I watched you." Mara could not stop the heat in her face. "You can't have." Elowen's hand made a small apologetic circle. "The house has long windows. So what do you want me to do?" Mara said. "Participate. Lie down and let it eat." "Sweet Aster," Elowen said with a sadness that came plain without decorations. "I want you to decide what you can bear to lose. That's all." Abram poured tea as if this were an ordinary debate. "You could go up to the tower," he said. "If you want a purpose, the house keeps its worst appetites there. You can see the scaffolding of things it hasn't eaten yet. Why would I want to see that?" "To decide," Abram said. "And because Ephraim waits there. He won't speak to me." "He's dead," Mara said. Abram smiled without humor. "So are you on some days." The tower's staircase began in a narrow door behind the librarian's ladder. The library itself was a throat of a room, full of books that had never been written by hands, and a smell like the dust that lies between two old photographs. Titles shifted when she looked at them: Geometries of Grief, The Fetish of Still Water, How to Unmake a Story. She didn't touch any. The ladder slid on its rails without being pushed, as if annoyed, and revealed the narrow door. Behind it, the spiral stair wound upward like a question the house had not answered to its own satisfaction. As she climbed, windows opened in the bare stone. Through each window, the same field of brown grass stood, but the light in each was the light of a different hour. One square showed dawn still wet. Another, a blue-black evening with a first star you could wish on if you didn't mind where wishes wandered. In a third, the field was full of crows. In a fourth, it was full of people sleeping. Mara kept climbing. Near the top, the air thinned in a way that had nothing to do with altitude. The stair ended abruptly at the rim of an unfinished room. A wind moved through the stone's pores. Beyond the missing roof, the sky gave a tired shrug. A man sat on a chair made of doors nailed together. He wore a suit too good for the rest of him, seams whispering of money, cufflinks that had known pride, though his skin had settled into him like an unmade bed. He held a drafting compass. He did not use it. Ephraim Vale, Mara said, because looking at him put his name in her mouth like a taste you cannot identify but know from childhood. You're late, he said. I wasn't invited. The key was an invitation. I thought Elowyn sent. Tit borrowed. He tapped the compass, twice on the arm of his chair, as if to make a point to someone other than her. You are Mara. You dreamed of a staircase with 12 steps that had only 11 rises. You have that mole on your left shoulder that your father called a birth star. You sanded down your voice to be tolerable. You blame yourself for a death you didn't cause. Stop. The word cut her lip on its way out. I am collecting nouns, he said. The house likes them. What do you want? I want to show you the truth before it eats you. He rose. The chair creaked. Come, mind the mortar. It thinks you taste of walnuts. He led her to the edge. The half-built wall offered no railing. The drop below was not horrifying because of its height. It was horrifying because she could not tell whether there was a bottom. Stone fell here with too much time on its hands. Ephraim pointed at the space where a wall should be. Look. Mara looked. The air shifted into a surface. Not a glass, no reflection, but a weight like water that refused to spill. Within the surface, rooms moved. She saw a bed and a hand smoothing a sheet that would never again be slept in, by the person whose shape had taught it its hollows. She saw a kitchen with a pot perpetually about to boil and never boiling. She saw a closet that held one coat, its sleeves empty and reaching. She saw a field of keys in the snow, and under each key a dream that wriggled like something half-born. What am I seeing? She asked. What I built, Ephraim said softly. Some men say softly like an affectation. He said it like a collapse. I couldn't stop her dying. I couldn't stop the small mundane deaths afterward. The quiet spoon put back in the drawer. The second pillow going cold and staying that way. I wanted to make a place where grief could have all its rooms, so life might have the rest. I made a door in my head and the door opened here. At first it took only what we offered it. Nightmares, bad days, the names we wouldn't say out loud. We were greedy with our relief. We thought we had discovered a cleverness no one else had imagined. We fed it our worst memories and kept our best. But the house wanted integrity. It hates leftovers. It started to eat the edges of the good things too, because the line between them is not real. Why call me? Because you've kept a room closed in yourself that belongs here. Because if you don't give it, the house will come to your town and take it anyway. Because I'm tired. He gave her a quick sideways glance. And because it likes you. What happens if I give it what it wants? Ephraim opened his hands, as if releasing a bird he had suffered to hold. You become easier to carry, or you become a hallway. It depends on the day. Dinah is a hallway. Yes. His mouth ticked. She was a door that opened the wrong way at first, but she's learned. Can I get her back? The question tore its way out. She had not known she wanted the child who wasn't hers until the wanting made a hook in her chest. Sometimes, Ephraim said, if you ask politely and pay a fair price, it gives you an hour. 1 hour like a good apple. The trick is knowing which hour is the one you can live with afterward. What's the price? Not in money. He held the compass up to the light. One tine shivered. In inventory. Count what you have. Subtract what you can live without. That amount. Mara stared at the moving rooms. She saw a woman in a parlor telling a joke to no one and laughing anyway, because her voice liked the shape of laughter. She saw a boy running across a field with a paper crown on his head, while the wind tried to snatch it. She saw a stair insisting on being one more than it was. Why does it want dreams? She asked. Same as gravity wants a body. Ephraim's voice thinned. Same as a name wants a mouth. It's not a moral appetite. It's a physics of absence. Down in the house a bell without a clapper rang. She felt it in her teeth. Ephraim looked toward the sound with something like fondness. It's hungry, he said. Best to decide soon, little Vale. That night Mara dreamed a memory she had salted and buried. This is what the house did when it courted you. It brushed its teeth, it made itself pleasant. It put on a voice that sounded like home. She and her mother in a hospital room, where the clock had stopped with 2 minutes past 3, caught like a dead moth under glass. Her mother's breath had become a mathematics of diminishing returns. Mara had been 20, and her hands did not know where to be. She had tried to count the seconds between breaths, as if that were a charm and not a cruelty. When the last breath arrived and did not leave, she had not cried. She had stared at the window where rain laid its face. She had thought, I have stepped into a corridor and shut the door behind me. She had thought I should have said more. She had thought, I'm going to be the caretaker of this absence forever. The dream changed its clothes into a different hurt. Mara at 7, hiding a broken glass behind the couch because her father had liked that glass, because it had been from their wedding, because he would look at her as if she had scratched the sun's paint. Her father finding the empty space on the shelf, then finding the shards, then finding her. He did not hit. He had never hit. He had the gift of finding a sentence and placing it exactly where it would echo for years. You never look where you put your hands. She woke with her hands balled and the taste of soap in her mouth. Eloan sat on the bed. She held a cup of water. The house is ready to bargain, she said. So are you. I hate it, Mara said. I hate the trick of it. I hate how it knows the color of the bedspread in that hospital. I hate that I'm tempted. Hate is a good flaw, Eloan said. You can stand on it to do the right thing. She looked thinner, as if some under-eye river had eroded her from within. Do you want an hour? With you? With anyone the house holds. Dinah. Your mother the version you want. Your father's sentence before he said it. Ephraim before he drew the door. You can choose what will it cost. Everything you keep behind your eyelids when you're falling asleep. Not the dreams that arrive after. The first cinema. The small show you put on to coax your mind into sleep. You'll lose it. Sleep will be a fall with no preamble. That's all. Eloan's smile apologized without confessing. That's all tonight. Mara thought of the first cinema. How it played the same 3 reels. The cottage that smelled of lemon and dust. The beach that never existed, where she could see the whole ocean and no people. The doorway of a kitchen where her mother's back was turned, and turning back was always still about to happen. That cinema had carried her through years of hard nights. It had always been there when she needed a handhold. I'll pay, she said, and surprised herself by not sounding brave or scared. Just practical. Eloan set the cup on the table. Go to the tower. Ephraim will open the ledger. Mara took the stairs 2 at a time. The house watched her with a fondness that felt unfair. In the library, titles swallowed their vowels as she passed. In the spiral, the windows flickered through hours, as if changing their minds. At the top, Ephraim already had the compass set and a book on his knee. "I want an hour," Mara said. "With Dinah?" He did not raise his head. "The house approves. And some time after, later, if I ask again, the house declines to speculate. Fine, what do you take?" "A common tithe." "Your first cinema." He ran a thin finger down the ledger's margin. "It adds a small gratuity for good behavior. I don't care." "To it?" Ephraim looked up now, and his eyes had a shine like a fork lifted to your face in a time before cameras. "You do care. But I won't punish you for it. What do I do?" "Stand here." He patted the floor beside him. "Put your hand on the wall." She did. The stone was warmer than flesh. "Now," he said, and his voice softened as if speaking to a frightened horse, "think of the doorway in your kitchen dream. Think of your mother's back. Think of how the light in that dream held its breath. Hold it. Hold it as if it were a coin you don't want to spend. Good. Now let it go." Mara let it go. The sound it made leaving her was small and obscene, like fingernails lifted from glue. She gasped. Her knees almost gave. "Sit," Ephraim said, and the chair of doors let her. "The hour begins when you name it." "Now," Mara said. The surface of air in the missing wall trembled. Doors swung open in it and closed again, each with a different hinge wail. The tower smelled briefly of sun on skin. Dinah stood in the spiral stair's last curve, lantern in hand. For once the lantern did not stink. It smelled like a child's hands after eating an orange. She smiled a small, busy smile, as if she had been interrupted while in the middle of an important task. "Hello," she said. "I'm myself." Mara did not know how to handle the heat in her throat. She knelt. "Hello, Dinah. What game is it?" "What game do you want?" "The game where we sit with our backs to each other and guess the color of things." Okay, they sat back to back. Dinah's shoulder blades felt like the folded fins of a small fish. They guessed colors. The stone was the color of old teeth. The wind was the color of the space under your bed. The compass in Ephraim's hand was the color of the note your teacher writes on the margins when you've done well. Dinah laughed twice in delight and once to be polite. "Why are you a hallway?" Mara asked. "I kept opening to the wrong place." The house got tired. Dinah shifted. "But sometimes at night I remember my feet. I walk, I count the wallpaper flowers. I visit the rooms that keep their doors unlocked. Do you see your mother? I see the version who brushed my hair carefully. I never see the one who left." Her voice had no accusation in it. It had nothing in it. That was worse. "Dinah," Mara said, and wished to sew the word into a blanket. "When the hour ends, will you—" "I'm very good at losing," Dinah said solemnly. "It's a family talent." Mara wanted to be brave enough to waste this hour on bravery. Instead, she became greedy. "Tell me a story you liked as a little kid." Dinah told one about a fox who ate stories, because stories tasted of chickens when they were fresh and of apples when they had rested a week. The fox learned to cook them with a little salt. The kings of the forest gave him a medal. He was very proud until one day he accidentally ate his own. After that he wandered away. His footprints grew out of the ground like saplings. The hour ended as hours do. It didn't ring a bell. It folded itself shut. Dinah's back against Mara's vanished. The space filled with the hum of the stone. Mara sat on the floor and held the shape Dinah had made in her posture, the way you warm your hands around a cup that isn't there. Ephraim closed the ledger. His mouth softened into a sympathy so honest she almost forgave him. "Thank you," she said, and hated it because what had she thanked? The person who took. The house that kept? "Count your change," Ephraim said. That night Mara lay in bed and closed her eyes. There was no cinema, no lemon dust cottage, no almost beach. Her mind hit the dark at once and fell through it. She woke gasping like a diver who misjudged the depth. Days in the house do not proceed in a line. They spiral. Some mornings, Elowen had sunlight in her cheeks and made a pot of coffee you could believe in. Some she sat by the cold hearth and moved her lips and let no sound out. Abram drafted careful maps of corridors that did not exist 10 minutes later. Mara learned which floorboards were violent and which wanted only to be noticed. The house grew bolder. It opened doors in the middle of hallways and leaned them into your path so you had to twist sideways to continue. It unrolled a runner carpet that became a river while your feet were on it and switched back when you lifted them. It sent moths to sleep in your hair and asked very softly, "For a story." "I don't have one," Mara said. "Liar," the walls murmured. She dreamed less because sleep came as a drop. But the dreams she kept were colder and wore shoes. One night the house laid a hand on her chest and pressed just enough to count her ribs. The next night it built a staircase down her spine and invited children to slide. "Now what?" she asked Elowen after a week, after 2. "What does it want?" "What you don't want to give," Elowen said. "Like any appetite. What haven't I given?" Mara spread her hands. "It ate my pretense of sleep. It ate my hour. It ate my patience. It picked the locks on my memory. What about the story of how you left?" Elowen asked, not as if accusing, but as if noting the weather. "You haven't said it out loud since you did it." "I left because you stopped speaking to anyone," Mara said, quick, as if that were enough mortar to hold. "You were a hole. You pulled the house around yourself. Dad had already left, and you left too, except your body stayed. I couldn't carry you." "I'm not sorry." Her throat closed an inch. "I'm a little sorry." Elowen nodded as if this satisfied a rule. "Tell that to it." Mara walked into the library where the books were patient the way spiders are patient. She looked for a spine that would hold what she needed to say, and found one that said Confessions Without Witness. She did not open it. She put her palm against the cover. She spoke, "I am not as brave as I pretend. I am selfish and I'm allowed to be. I loved you. I love you." "I left," she swallowed. "If you keep taking, I won't have enough to understand what's gone." A pause held the room like a breath held too long. The house made a small please noise it did not give back. It did something worse, which was to remember. Winter arrived. It was not much colder than the week before, but the light learned a cruelty it had lacked. A storm came at last like a decision. The tower's no roof felt like a mouth waiting to catch snow. Abram stayed awake 3 nights in a row to keep a corridor from chewing through its doorframe. Elowen coughed a fine dust. Ephraim did not appear for 3 days, then 4. Not in the tower and not in the glass surfaces, where he liked to leave his ghost's thumbprints. On the 5th night, the house served dinner. Mara did not intend to attend. The dining room had hung on its hooks its old arrogance. Long table, tall candles, glass that exaggerated light. The plates were a red so deep they felt like something after bleeding. Food waited. Roast that had never been animal, and yet made your mouth ache. Potatoes that repeated the shape of your name. A pie shone on the sideboard, with a shine stolen from someone's hair. At each setting lay a folded card. Mara's said Mara, Elowen's said Mother, Abram's said Caretaker. An empty place card read Guest, and the name did not fill itself in. "Don't eat," Abram whispered. "Do eat," Elowen said, with the resigned cheerfulness of a person who has lost the argument and is trying to make the best of the picnic. "What happens if we do?" Mara asked. "What happens if you don't?" Elowen countered. "It will sulk. Then it will take the door off the hinges to make a point. I can live with sulking. Can you?" Elowen lifted the lid of a silver dish. Inside, not oysters, not mushrooms, not anything you could name. The smell was a book pressed to your face. It's a feast at the end of a famine. It honors us and reminds us we belong to its mouth. "Poetry," Abram said dryly. "Eat the bread." "It's safe, relatively." They ate bread. Butter tasted like a memory of summer you weren't present for, and yet had somehow put your feet in. The house hummed a low satisfaction. Mara kept her eyes on her plate. She was afraid to look at the head of the table. When she did, there was no host. There was only the chair, and the chair wore a shadow like a coat. "Elowen," the not voice said. The plates vibrated. "Yes," Elowen said. "Payment." Mara reached for her mother's hand. Bone and warmth. Heloquin squeezed once, and in that squeeze Mara read, "It's fine. It is time. It was always going to be time." Elowen stood. She had worn her hair up in a coil pinned with an old gilt comb. She reached up and took the comb out. Hair fell to her shoulders. It was not a ritual. It was just a thing a person does before lying down. She walked to the hall and turned left. The long runner led to the parlor. Mara followed. Abram did too. The house did not block them. It preferred an audience. In the parlor, Elowen lay on the chaise where she had first smiled at Mara. She settled her shawl. She looked as if she were about to nap during a thunderstorm. The picture over the mantel, the salt-racked cliff, leaned forward as if curious. In the grate, Ash trembled and remembered fire and thought better of it. "Don't make a mouth of grief," Elowen said to Mara. "It will eat you back." "I won't." Mara knelt and kissed her mother's hand. She did not make promises she could not keep. She kept this one small promise. She would not give grief her mouth. She would keep it somewhere else, a pocket. Elowen exhaled. The house inhaled. Something unlatched with a noise too small to belong to such a big change. Elowen's body remained on the chaise. Her absence stood up, an outline in the air. It looked at Mara with an expression like apology, and like love, and like a person about to board a train they cannot afford to miss. It touched Mara's hair. Then it walked out of itself and into the wall. Mara did not cry. She made a small box inside her ribs and put a small thing in it and shut it with both hands. Abram made a sound as if Faith had stepped on his foot. The house's not voice sighed in an echo that didn't return. "Payment received," it said. Mara stood. "I want a thing." The air brightened in a way that meant the house put its head to the side and paid attention. Bold, it said, maybe amused. "Give me my first cinema back," Mara said. "Keep the hour." Silence fell with weight. Ephraim appeared in the doorway, more present than he had been in weeks, the ledger under his arm. "It can," he said. "It won't." Then another bargain, Mara said. "I'll bring you something at once more." "What?" Abram asked, horrified and hungry at once.